morning to Abrams and Bettis beyond the forecast. Dolly went from tropical storm to hurricane at the 5 o'clock advisory. So we currently have our second hurricane of the season. It's headed right towards the border of Texas and Mexico. Mike is there. He's going to talk about why rain, not wind, is their worst enemy coming up. And of course, the Rio Grande River is there. They're concerned about levees. And I feel like a lot of time you hear the word levees. What's the first thing you think about when I say levees? Perhaps New Orleans, Hurricane Katrina. We're going to talk about Mike. Mike's going to have that coming up. But first, let's give you the update here on Hurricane Dolly. And here it is. Again, there's the United States. Here's the Gulf of Mexico. And boom, that's right where Hurricane Dolly is located. And look at the cloud cover extending all the way up to the northern Texas and Louisiana border. So a very broad area here. Of course, we're going to have the strongest winds right here along the center of this hurricane here. We do have tropical storm force winds extending out quite far here from the center of circulation, about 160 miles. Hurricane force winds extending out about 15 miles from the center. So you have to be really close to the center to experience those hurricane force winds here as this continues to move towards the coast of Texas. A question I've been getting a lot: is this going to affect our gas? It doesn't look like it will. Majority of all the oil rigs are up here towards the northern Texas coast and Louisiana coast as well. And coming up a little bit later, our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons, is in the house to show you a worst-case scenario for a hurricane and that oil and the prices going way up. So let's show you where our Hurricane Dolly is headed to. Currently, our winds are at 75 miles an hour. To be a Category 1 hurricane, 74 miles an hour, so we do have that. Again, look at all this cloud cover, already feeling it here in Texas, also into Louisiana. And here is a projected path. Boom. Right into Brownsville. It looks like by tomorrow afternoon, that's where Mike is located. And again, I want to focus here. The Rio Grande River basically splits Texas and Mexico right along the border there, and they are concerned about the heavy rainfall, not only in Texas, but in Mexico. Higher elevation, that can produce more rain flowing right into the Rio Grande and going right through Brownsville. So we're going to talk about all this coming up. But first I want to show you the radar, and this is one of the reasons that our Mike Bettis is getting delayed to be on the show. You're probably saying, Steph, let's go to Mike. Okay, here's the problem. Rain. When you have so much rain coming down and it's so heavy, you have the cloud cover, you can't get the satellite, the signal, to go through all of the rain and the clouds. So we're seeing actually more rain in the southeast than they're getting in Texas right now. Of course, that is going to change over time. So here we go in and around Atlanta, and look at all of the storms. We are located in Atlanta, and that is what is stopping us from getting our own Mike Bettis up live in Texas. But don't worry, we're going to get them. Have no fear. The rain will blow through. We'll have live pictures from Texas, and we're also going to talk about the sandbagging efforts there, because they have done hundreds of sandbags there. Each family is getting about 6 sandbags if you're single, 12 sandbags if you have a family, and Mike has more details on that and if that is really going to help them at all. I was just talking a little bit, I had heard you mention earlier, 6 sandbags for a single family, 12 for a bigger family. Explain more about that and how much that will actually help.
Well, you know, every little bit helps, Steph. That's definitely true. And they have multiple areas around Brownsville, through the county, through the city, where they're handing out free sandbags. And we're at the city facility right now, where they actually use these big front-end loaders. Think of it almost as a salt barn, where they have these big stockpiles of sand. Front-end loader can dump it into this machine. This machine automatically then fills sandbags. And then the sandbags are piled up inside the barn here. When they have them all piled up inside the barn here, then the cars pull through. When the cars pull through, the workers unload the sandbags right into the cars. At this particular facility, Steph, they're actually allowed 8 sandbags. But the cars come through. It's a really efficient process. And would you believe that this line literally has hundreds of cars in it? It goes down the street, down another street, and around the block. It's literally hundreds of cars deep, and it's been like this all day long. You come through, you register so that they know who you are, and you come through and you get your sandbag. Obviously, they need it, and they know it's a concern because rain and heavy amounts of rain are likely what we're to see with Hurricane Dolly as it makes its landfall here, either in northern Mexico or in South Texas. What that means is potentially a half foot to maybe more than a foot of rain. It's a low-lying area. It's very flat. They've had saturated soil since the beginning of the month, so flooding primarily the biggest concern. Also, Steph, we are worried about some wind, maybe some sporadic power outages, but at this point, the high water, potential overwashing of the Rio Grande levees. Something to watch for. We're going to have more detail on that coming up, but an operation that's been continuous throughout the day today, Steph. Back to you.
Oil prices are sky high as is, and Dolly won't affect them. But what Armageddon track would spell disaster for offshore rigs, onshore refineries, and the thunderstorms? We see that, of course, here in the center of the circulation for the most part. However, the clouds spread all the way actually up to Louisiana. That's how big it is. Look at it. You can get an idea here of, here it is, there you go, Mexico and Texas border, and it's headed right towards the Rio Grande. The river, of course, goes right along the border of Texas and Mexico, Brownsville. That's where our Mike Bettis is located, right in the center of that cone. Now, I feel like ever since the 2004-2005 hurricane season, Dr. Lyons is here now to talk more about this. A lot of people have been worried about the surge. Katrina had such a huge surge. We hadn't seen anything like that in a while. And the waves caused a lot of damage during Katrina. How are those two related?
Well, they're inversely related. Where we have high surge, we typically have low waves. And the reason for that is when you have shallow water offshore, water piles up. But when the waves come into that shallow water, they attenuate. The bottom friction damps them out.
Oh.
So there's an inverse relationship between wave height and surge.
Okay.
And I can...
we're going to see that here. We're down in South Texas. It's more of a wave thing and not a surge, right, where Mike is located.
Exactly. Let's look at this current scenario over here for this particular Hurricane Dolly. Down in South Texas, it's fairly deep water down here, so the surge potential is low, but the wave heights are going to be very high, 15 to 18 feet down here. As you go to the north, the surge starts to become more important, and notice the waves drop away. Of course, the winds are not going to be as strong up here as well. But then all the way over here, in the western Florida Panhandle, notice there's some wave action there as well. That's because that is very wave prone, but not surge prone. Now let's look at what we expect for the water rise along the coast. Even with a Category 1 hurricane, potentially a fairly strong one, we're only looking about 3 to 5 feet. As a matter of fact, in some of these areas, we may actually see the water rise almost as high, farther to the north where the wind is weaker, where it's more surge prone and shallow. So where we have high surge, we have low waves, and in the southern portions of Texas over the next 24 hours, we're going to see not that great a surge, but the waves on top of it are going to be significant. We're going to have some beach erosion. It won't be extreme because it's going to be over fairly quickly, Stephanie.
Now, Dr. Lyons, those are a couple of the impacts. The other things I'm worried about here, and we were just talking about, the wind. Now, we have a minimal hurricane, but what's the last? We had Allen in 1980, Beulah before that in 67. A lot of people might not even be used to 70-mile-an-hour winds. That can surely take down power lines all by itself without the help of trees even.
Yeah, we have a tendency, in particular me, comparing to a Category 5 hurricane, but wind even in a Category 1 can be significant. Let's look at some of the impacts in this particular case for this one. Now, the power outages are one thing. Where that eye wall comes in onshore here, we're going to expect power outages very likely, but keep in mind, if we have 70 miles, 80 mile per hour sustained winds on the coast, if you haven't pruned those trees, those winds are going to prune the trees. You're going to cause the power lines to go down. Some signs will go down. If you have cloth canopies over your windows, those will blow right off the wall of your home. So there could be some significant minor damage from this. And, of course, up the coast as well, we could see all the way up to southern Corpus Christi, winds strong enough to cause some power outages there. We don't expect direct damage from strong structures, however.
And we don't expect any problems with our gas either, which you're going to talk about a little bit later, right?
Exactly.
An Armageddon-type path we're going to show the people.
Exactly.
This is not it.
This is not it.
All right, Dr. Lyons, we certainly appreciate that. That's one form of